Well, it was a little while ago, both myself and Tanya Unkovich headed overseas for separate conferences, but on the same day. And Tanya, I've got to admit, I was looking out for you at the airport, never saw you.
Well, actually, I was looking out for you as well. It was very early, wasn't it?
Very
early. We
early.
were both still a little bit blind from the early start.
I'm not so sure. Tanya Unkovich joins me in the studio, and why I bring this up is today we're talking about embracing our heritage, embracing our roots, because the conference you went to was sort of about that. Can you tell us more?
Well, it was. It was it was the inaugural Croatian Women in Leadership Summit.
Wow.
A combination of Australian and New Zealand women in leadership. And this conference was held at the embassy, the Croatian embassy in Canberra. So I very much had a taste of going back to my roots again and my heritage as we mixed and mingled and listened to the greatness of and amazing things that our parents went through in order to immigrate and set up life in a new world.
Yeah, I mean, amazing conference to go to. And I think for a lot of us, we perhaps don't connect with our heritage or don't know how to. Did you come away with a greater sense of, I'm not sure, a heart for your country, a heart for your people?
Look, I've always had it, interestingly. Ever since I was a teenager, I really embraced it, the former Yugoslavia, then before it broke away and became Croatia. So I've always embraced it. I've always known about the difficulties that my parents had. However, I went to a deeper level on this conference because my parents are now aging and things change, and it's always good to remember what they have been through and what has made them who they are today, and to see parts of them in myself and to feel gratitude for the resilience that they have instilled in their children and what they gave up as well in order to come to this country, and how great it's been for their children, me and my siblings.
So how important do you think then is connecting to our past, connecting to our roots as such?
Look, I think it's very, very important to be at peace with your past, to be okay with your heritage, to have a sense of belonging and knowing and being comfortable with who you are and that core of who you are. To also, if there are things there for you that you feel angry about or not happy about with your past, then I'm just going to invite you to be open to looking at that and making peace with that part of your life, reconciling with your past. And that way, when you feel whole and content, then imagine how great your life will be and how much more you can be in this world.
Now, something that we talked about off air, and I just think this is a really important thing to bring up, was something that you heard as a 17-year-old, but you've not forgotten it ever since. And it really is to do with this kind of thing. Can we talk about that?
Sure thing. Well, I'm always open to sharing that I was a troubled teenager, and I went off and had this elderly Christian couple pray for me. And before they started doing that, this man said to me, I just want to make sure that you are okay with your parents. How do you feel about your mum and dad? Do you feel any anger? How are you with who you are and who your parents are? And it was such a deep question for me. I've never, ever forgotten that, because he then said to me, this is something I want you to make sure that you have reconciled with and that you are at peace with. Because if you're not, it's going to be harder for you in some way to be at peace with yourself. And I've always remembered that, and if ever I get grumpy with my mum and dad, as we all do, that always comes back to me 40 years later, nearly 40 years later. So
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think maybe a lot of people perhaps don't think about, but actually what an important thing to reconcile, what an important thing to have a shift in order for yourself to be able to move on.
Yes. And look, I heard a story the other day about a famous author who was very angry with his father, who was then deceased, and he was actually going to go to his grave and just yell at him and everything. And when he got to his grave, he felt this immense peace and forgiveness for his father. And when he left, he then finished the book that he'd been writing for months and months and months. Couldn't write it. He said, I finished it in 2 weeks.
Right.
Because his
He'd
heart
moved
was clear.
on. Yeah,
That's all it took, was that forgiveness.
Now, Tanya, I think, a lot of people will be thinking about their heritage and going, well, I don't really know a lot about it. I don't know about the traditions. I don't know about this sort of thing. And I want to talk about that in just a moment. But tell us a little bit about some of your Croatian roots, some of the traditions and the resilience that has been passed on from your family. Because I think for a lot of people, either one, they might be listening, they also have a similar story, or maybe it's really different from theirs. So I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Well, look, so many left the former Yugoslavia and they went to New Zealand, America, Australia. They went everywhere. So as you know, many came to New Zealand and worked very, very hard. And that was what we saw my parents do. My parents worked very, very, very hard. They used to weep all the time because they wanted to go back home to Yugoslavia. And, then there was the war in Yugoslavia and it broke up and there was just so much horror and sadness that happened in the early 90s. So there's all that hurt and pain there as well. But one thing, we've talked about it, is the Croats, they've got so much resilience and they're known for their hard work. They're known for their food and the cooking and how we show love with food. We're known for swinging our hands around when we talk and we're all loud. So very passionate, very much like the Italians, aren't we, the Mediterraneans. And it's quite beautiful, actually. It is quite beautiful.
Yeah, did you rediscover that when you went to this conference, when you were surrounded by people with that same heritage, or had they lost some of that sort of vibrancy?
Well, no, actually, I was surprised actually as to how much they still embraced it, because I was around, 100 and something women, all of Croatian heritage, and how strong they were in their heritage and wanting to hold on to it as much as possible. And I came home thinking, you know what, I think I've let mine slip a little bit. I think I better do something, even it's make sure I know how to bake all those goodies.
So, I mean, for those wanting to reconnect with their heritage, perhaps it is a little bit of research.
Little bit of research, talking to whoever else you've got there. We talk to my dad a lot and even my mum, and just thinking now, it's nice to record them as they talk, get it down on video or audio or something like that, and just be curious. Yeah. Where did I come from?
I think it's an important question. Hey, thank you for joining me on the show today. If people want to find out more about what you do, they can check out your website, can't they?
They sure can, TanyaUnkovich.com.
Thanks, Tanya.